What if it was impossible to go a day in your city without encountering Jesus through his people on mission everywhere, every day? Welcome to the Saturate podcast, where we equip everyday disciples and leaders to make Jesus known in the everyday stuff of life. We'll share real stories and practical tools to equip you as you live as God's people, where you live, work, learn, and play. We're so glad you're here. Hi, I'm Jeff Vanderstelt, Executive Director of Saturate. Whether you lead a church, a small group, or simply want to grow as a disciple of Jesus, our hope is to equip you to live as a disciple who makes disciples everywhere and every day. Today, I'm excited because we get to talk to not old that he's old, but though I think we're both getting old, but an old friend of mine, someone I've known for quite some time. This is Todd Engstrom. And before I tell you more about him, it had been a dream of mine for us to work together for quite some time, and it finally has come about. So Todd serves in a variety of capacities with Saturate. He's also served as an advisory board member in the early years of this ministry when we first started. Some of you know him as the person who ministered at the Austin Stone in Austin, Texas for 20 years, so a long time, equipping missional communities to live on mission, building and leading congregational teams, and more recently, stewarding the local and global mission as Austin Stone has done incredible work, not only locally, but all over the world, and sent people like crazy. Well, maybe we can talk a little bit about that. He's also engaged in some counseling as well as theological training. So, Todd, you are a Swiss knife, I guess we could say. You got so many things you're skilled at, so many gifts you engage the church with. So thankful for you. He also regularly trains and coaches leaders on ministry, discipleship, and organizational health. And for fun, he dabbles a little bit in some entrepreneurial work. And you are a Notre Dame fan. I have to honor you for that, because you've had your ups and downs, and this last year was tough. To not see them get in the final playoff bracket, I think they deserved it. But you also cheer on Austin FC, which, of course, as a Sounders fan, I'm not excited about that. But hey, I get it. And you are married to Olivia, and you have 5 children. My goodness. Okay, that's a lot. I'll stop talking. Todd, is there anything you want to add to that and, catch us up on?
It's overwhelming to hear all of that. And in many ways, thinking about just the Irish, I'll comment there very quickly. It was definitely a bummer, but I had so much stuff going on that I honestly didn't care. And I think that's a mark of sanctification in my life, that I wasn't despondent that the Irish didn't make the playoffs.
There you go. Yeah.
But I was in church when the announcement came out. So 2 quick things. One, I was walking up to get a cup of coffee before worship. My friend Ken walks up and he's like, "Congratulations." And my comment was "Not yet, man. Not yet. It has not been announced," So I was cautious even at that point. He's an Aggie,
Okay.
And then my phone just started going crazy about 40 minutes into the service. And I was like, "Don't look at it, Todd. Just stay focused on the Lord." And I did that stupid glance at my phone. And forgive me, Will Boston, but I did not pay attention to your sermon that day because I was mostly laughing at my college friends losing their minds.
So. Oh, no. I mean, it was quite a surprise. I don't think they would have won the final anyway. I mean, Indiana was unbelievable.
I will say this. They beat Indiana last year in the playoffs. And again, Indiana looked unbelievable. But if anybody was going to beat them, it was going to be the Irish this year, I'm sure.
Of course. I love it. Well, Todd, there are a lot of people who do know you. There are also people who don't and are new to who you are. So I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your story, how the Lord shaped you for disciple making, and you care a lot about citywide work. And there's obviously part of your story that shaped that. So tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to be here.
I mean, it's I always ask, do you want the nickel, dime, or quarter version? So I'll start with the nickel version, then feel free to, ask me for more, Jeff. But I think, in terms of the story of Todd, there are a few things that really deeply shape me when it comes to disciple making in the context of community. The first is really growing up in the family that I grew up in. Our door was always open. I'll never forget, my mom always just being ready and available to receive neighbors and friends. And I'm pretty sure my mom still like has not a working relationship, but actual relationships with like the people that we dated in high school. She still talks to them. So I'm like, she just was this woman who invited anyone and everyone. And so it was always a home of hospitality. So the second piece for me was really how I came to Christ. I went to a Catholic high school, so which is a bit shocking that we had Young Life at our high school. But basically, our sophomore year of high school, everybody would go to Young Life camp called Malibu, which is in British Columbia. It's this beautiful, gorgeous camp, right on like an inlet of the Pacific Ocean, just stunningly beautiful. And so I went just because it was like, everybody does it. I should go. It's the camp thing to do in high school. And it was the first time I'd ever really heard the gospel presented in a way that was like, God created the world, we fell in sin, Jesus came, he died, he rose again, and that demands a response from your life. And I'll never forget they do Say So, that last day of camp. And I was like, there's no way I'm standing up and telling people that I've decided to trust Jesus. It's like, didn't want anything to do with it, but it did introduce me to this community of people who were seeking to follow Jesus in my high school. And I participated, engaged over the course of that next 9 months. And really, that's when God captured my heart for the Lord, the work that he's done through his death, burial, and resurrection. And ultimately, I saw it lived out in this small community of people. And again, the catalytic moment for me to come to faith was I had a friend my junior year of high school that was killed in a hunting accident. It was just devastatingly sad.
Wow.
But that was the occasion of watching the uniqueness of the hope and joy that Krister, my leader, and several others had, that I was like, I want whatever that is. And so that was kind of the, catalytic moment. And then Krister asked me on his couch in February of 1996, what's holding you back from following Jesus? And my answer was, honestly, nothing. And so I prayed the sinner's prayer. That's what he led me to do. And it's all I knew at the point. And I believe that from that day, God had saved me by grace through faith and then empowered me to serve. So that's kind of like big moment one.
Yeah.
And then two is I went to Notre Dame. So, and basically every individual who is an evangelical that attends Notre Dame, I would argue, struggles at some point with whether or not they should become Catholic. It's such a compelling environment. It's academically rigorous. It's rich in your social life. There's, sort of icons and artifacts of Catholicism. There's just really any kind of expression you can imagine of Catholicism. So if you love Jesus and you have kind of an evangelical tradition, you're just forced with what we call a community apologetic. You're immersed in this place that's testifying to whether or not, their claims are true. And again, for me as an evangelical, I had to ask that question. But really what God used in my college years was a recognition, no, I love these people that are around me, but I do fundamentally disagree with them on the nature of grace and the function of faith and God's activity in our lives. And so kind of seeing and experiencing that was a real kind of community of grace, difference, but then also just disposition to allow for people to have really strong beliefs. And so that community of faith that I operated in at Notre Dame was really powerful and stuck with Young Life as well and led there. So then kind of the final piece that, I can talk about is really arriving in Austin. My wife and I got married in 2004 and we came to Austin. We knew two people in the city. They were two domers. So Tom, Kylie, thanks for being with us in that journey. And again, it was like, we love Jesus. We're in a new place. We don't know what to do. And we'd had some difficult experiences with church throughout college, but came. And over the course of time, we kind of visited several churches, did the church shopping thing, and walked into the doors of the Austin Stone. I think it was October of 2004. And man, I'll never forget that first one. It was just like, the worship was live. It was something it's hard to even describe what it felt like at that point, but there's something alive in here. And then Matt getting up and preaching, just like, what have I just heard? This guy is on fire. He's saying stuff that I'm like, I've never heard before. And in many ways, kind of stepping into life at the Austin Stone was a recognition that evangelism is so important and community is so formative, but the church has a right place at the center of that. And I got to live out and be a part of a church that said, hey, we believe both. We believe the church gathered and the church scattered is crucial to God's mission. And so yeah, the early years of experiencing that, probably 2004 to like 2009 were really impactful. And even going to Soma school, and hearing you teach on the nature of gospel centrality, gospel fluency, and the way that lives out in a little bit different structure in the Northwest. I'm like, this is what I dreamed of, So that's probably too long-winded, but that's maybe a kind of summary of how I got, in some sense, to be convictional about disciple making in the context of community that's pursuing God's mission.
That's great, man. Thank you. I want to hear, we'll talk a little bit more about your heart for the city and the work that you have done and envision doing, but you're a new member of our team, Saturate. In some ways, I feel like you've always been a member of the team, even though we didn't ever pay you for that, but you've definitely been a contributor in a variety of ways, coaching, contributing content, advice, counsel, all that. So I feel like we've been at this for a long time, but more recently you've come officially on the team. And one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the podcast, just to have people meet you and get to know you and understand what you contribute to what we're doing. So talk a little bit about your role and what you're doing on the team and even some of the hopes you have for the future with us.
Yeah. This might be polarizing to some in ministry, but the job title or role is Integrator. Some people have strong aversions to EOS, strategy, sort of those kinds of things. And my former title was executive pastor, and so I come by executive functions honestly. And the role of an integrator is to support a visionary leader. That's you, Jeff. And I always have loved getting to serve alongside of apostolically gifted, visionary individuals who think about the burden that I think God has for the world and the ways in which this gospel of grace can cross cultures and can genuinely transform entire people groups and can impact whole cities. And so I get just so thrilled and excited when I get to serve alongside of that kind of leader. And so the role of integrator at Saturate is mostly helping take the vision that you have and the vision that we have collectively in this ministry to see the good news of Jesus permeate, saturate all of life and everyday disciples living within their giftedness, their Holy Spirit gifted opportunity to proclaim the good news that Jesus is Lord and to live out the realities of the kingdom that change the neighborhoods that they live in. And so I feel a little guilty that's not the exact tagline of Saturate, but that's like what gets me fired up.
The heart. That's the heart, man. Yes.
And so, in kind of core function, I spend time helping lead and shape the team towards outcomes. We do a lot of planning and then we do execution work. We think a lot about how are we communicating. We think a lot about how are we stewarding the resources that God has entrusted to our ministry. And then we think a lot about just the people that God has given to serve Saturate and also the people that we long to serve. And how do we keep doing that well? So I do a lot more stuff, but that's the general way I talk about the role.
Yeah. Well, the team is so glad. I mean, I am, and so is the whole team, glad you're here because it allows me to do what I'm best at. I've had to do both roles for a few years now, both the visionary and the integrator.
You've done them excellently, my friend, excellently. So.
For someone who's that's not my primary thing, I still am able to for a season. But yeah, it's so good to have you here, and the team already feels the relief of having your gifts and your presence and your perspective. It's just incredible. We love it. Love having you be a part of it. Can't wait to see what's in store as we keep working together. Mm-hmm. I know you have a real heart for Austin and really serving the Greater Austin Mission Society. Tell us a bit about that. Mm-hmm. What's going on? What are you doing? What do you hope for? Envision for the future?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start with a little bit of just heart for Austin, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. So again, part of the reason I think I enjoy working with you is because you appreciate the place that I'm from, Mm-hmm. The Pacific Northwest is very different than the American South. I guess I could go on a long tangent there, but Austin is this really unique city. It has this Southern heart, but the soul of the city is a bit more like kind of your Pacific Northwest realities. It's pretty individualistic. It has sort of this sense of I don't know, permissive freedom to say, hey, we want to try, we want to innovate, we want to do new things. It's very progressive as a city relative to the rest of Texas, which again, Texas is a very conservative
Yeah.
state.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I say that with a grain of salt, but Austin is this fun and funky town, that God called us to. He just brought us here in 2004 to pursue a PhD at the University of Texas. And I think it's been fun to sort of grow alongside of Austin, because the other part about Austin is really when we arrived in 2004 was a significant inflection point of population growth in the city. Kind of the way I describe Austin is we were sort of a regional city with national influence in the early 2000s. And we've grown to become really a national city with a degree of global influence at this point. And that rapid growth has had profound impact on the city's soul at large, and, really on the church and the kingdom, kind of the ministries that make up the kingdom here in Austin as well. So the last piece I'll say in this is, in 2023, I had some really significant health issues that were just a catalyst that God used to shake me into a very different state. And I think without going into the entirety of that story, what God spoke through the midst of deep physical suffering was, you're no longer called to this kingdom assignment, but you're called to this city. It took a long time, about 18 months, to really come to that degree of conviction. And there's this sense of like, I love this city. I've grown up alongside of it. I'm maybe now at a position where I'm a bit of a reluctant missionary to it, simply because I'm from the Pacific Northwest and my wife is from Kansas. And if we had our earthly desires, we would be with our earthly families. But God has just reaffirmed the sense of calling to Austin. So maybe what's changed in that, and kind of why of the Greater Austin Mission Society, is one of the driving forces for me in serving at the Austin Stone was really rooted early on. We wrestled through really God's activity through Jonah, and how God used the reluctant missionary Jonah to bring the city of Nineveh to repentance, and it's sort of this great story of God's power and God's grace with this reluctant, sort of cowardly individual. And at the Austin Stone in those days, we were really compelled by this possibility that God could change a whole city. We knew it was going to take our church. We knew it was going to take a variety of expressions of ministry. But the thing that really gripped me, and why I've served and labored and still worship there, is like, that belief had to be a part of an environment I was in, that God could redeem, God could restore, God could reach an entire city. And, kind of with my journey of suffering, with kind of the still similar heart, 2024 for me, I just called it the year of wandering in the desert. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just kind of knew that it wasn't to continue serving in the role that I was in. And as I kind of journeyed with the Lord, he brought a sense of closure from all the disorientation of what had occurred. And then it was sort of this discernment of what? And for me, it was to live like a missionary in the city of Austin. So I knew that I needed to provide for my family, and that meant raising personal financial support. I was like, I will do this. And the second piece is like, I have a lot of ideas. I'm not unfamiliar to you, Jeff, not shocking to you, but it was, I need something to tell people that I'm going to be doing. And so I've kind of been wrestling with the city reaching vision and heart, and also doing some research on local mission societies, which again, I'm an uber nerd as well, but there's a rich history of mission societies. And I was like, we don't really have something like this in Austin. We have these expressions of convening. We have these catalytic ministries. We have these supportive works, but there's no real mission society that's waving the banner, not just for the church, not just for the kingdom, but for the lost. And so the Greater Austin Mission Society was sort of born out of that cocktail, what was going on in my life. And really the vision is to see God's kingdom come here on earth as it is in heaven in Austin. We long to do that by fostering collaboration in the kingdom in our city. We long to do that by addressing gaps in the kingdom ecosystem. And we long to do that because I'm such a nerd through researching mission.
Yes.
So we could talk more about that, but I do appreciate a good research project.
Yes. Oh man. We do need to talk about that because I think some of the people that are listening care a lot about their city
Mm-hmm.
and the work you do to understand what's happening, where the opportunities are, where God's already at work. I just think it's stellar. I mean, your ability to research and capture content and ideas and understand the real fabric of what's happening is pretty remarkable. And so, one, I would love to let's do that. Like, what have you discovered? Maybe some of the ways you've discovered what's going on in Austin, what you've discerned, and then in light of what you've discovered and what you're learning, what's your hope? What are some of your dreams for what could happen?
Yeah, that's good. On the maybe discernment side, I'll really give kind of two kind of veins of thought. I think it was maybe John Tyson that recently said, we want to be data informed and spirit led. And so for me as a researcher, again, former physical chemist, I'm like, data matters a lot. I never want it to trump hearing God's voice and leading God's people. But I think especially in ministry, there's a real lack of just data informed perspective. And so being the nerd that I was like, what data could I get on the city of Austin? And the real reason I did this project was like, I want to challenge every assumption. I've been here for 21 years at that point. And really it was like thinking like a missionary with new eyes means understanding the context that God has placed you in. And I'm like, I need to challenge every assumption, even though I've been here for 21 years, like let me use this data project to do it. So really, in terms of things that I learned, it's a no duh that Austin has grown demographically and population, but a few different data points in kind of the one in the demographic space is Austin just this year shifted from being a majority white city to now a minority majority white city. Simply put, we dropped below 50% of white population in the metropolitan statistical area. And most people in kind of like our your and my dominant cultural perspective tend to just not really factor in. There are so many others that are not like us. And that is the demographic missional reality of Austin, that churches like the Austin Stone are beautiful and I love them deeply. And I long for her to be more effective. And at the same time, there are many other churches in our city that look nothing like us that are having as profound as an impact. It just looks very different because it's in a language we don't understand. It's in a cultural form that is different than our norms. And ultimately, it's a leadership community that is disconnected. So the demographics of Austin have shifted majorly from 20 years ago. And two is maybe some spiritual data. Barna did city-based reports 2012, 2017, and 2021 on Austin. And then the Pew Religious Research Forum does this big kind of large-scale research project in 2023 and 2024. It's the Religious Landscape Survey. And kind of the number that I was really curious is like, what is the spiritual temperature of Austin? And the Barna report has this data kind of grouping they call practicing Christians. So it's people who identify as Christian. And then they have regular practices associated with their faith, which are basically they attend church at least monthly. And then beyond that, they have some spiritual practice of Bible reading or prayer or something like that. So in 2012 in Austin, this is what was shocking to me. The percentage of practicing Christians was 46% in our city, which is very different than the narrative that a lot of people told in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is a church planting graveyard. It's lost as a goose in the hailstorm. And I'm like, no, it really wasn't.
Right.
Based on the Barna data. So from 2012 to 2017, though, it was 46% and it dropped to 31%. So in a 5-year span, we lost 15% of the practicing Christian population in the city of Austin. And then in 2021, it goes down to 23%. So basically, we went half of our Christian population, in that short time period disappeared. And I think this has been really like hard for me in some ways because I look at that and that's the height of growth and impact of the Austin Stone. And again, God did amazing things, but I think the stark reality in the city of Austin, if you use that data, you have to say what we were doing didn't have the intended impact. And in fact, even in all of this ministry and all this effort we did, I'm sure there was grace, but the city around us wasn't shaped by it. And so I think that grieves me still, you know, that like, oh man, you know, to feel like you were successful, but then to be confronted with the numeric reality is just like, whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why data matters to me. And then the other is just like spiritual sensitivity. And again, I put this out there with a great deal of trepidation and willingness to receive critique and chastening. But as I've talked to kingdom leaders in Austin, I'd say there's two things happening in our city right now. One is in the kingdom. We sort of have this veneer of collaboration, but underneath the surface, it's still pretty competitive. And I don't think that's like, I'm trying to beat you. I think that's just scarcity mentality. It's like we've been losing Christians, we've been losing resources, and just leaders feel this scarcity mentality to protect and keep what they have. And then maybe in the broader culture, like Austin shifted from this like gritty bootstrap, you know, sort of we can do anything just by sheer willpower, to now being really pretty wealthy, well-resourced. And I would say that there's a spirit of comfort in our city that's kind of more broad and pervasive, where people are really less willing to take risk, really less willing to, you know, do bold things, because again, there's just this comfort of life here in the city right now. So,
wow, that's a lot. So, in light of that, what are you hopeful for? What are some of the dreams that you're?
Yeah, I mean, I think it lines up so much with Saturate. It's like, I still have that same heart. I want all of Austin to bend a knee to King Jesus. Like, that's what I most want. And as I've had these conversations, I feel almost foolish for saying it, because I know God doesn't promise it, but I want to live this life that God has granted with people who believe it's possible. You know, and so this dream for Saturate and Greater Austin Mission Society really is, can we live in such a way as we believe God's power, though it's not a promise, can still change a whole city? And so for me, again, I don't have a lot of like clarity on exactly what that will look like, but I know the heart of people that I want to do it with. And the other side of it is like, sorry, this is going to take a little bit long, but going through the season of COVID and all the disruption that happened from 2020 to 2023, you know, I had this beautiful picture of a resilient organization at the Austin Stone. Like, the Austin Stone is, by God's grace, engineered to be resilient and will be. We've already gone through so much. I'm like, this church is going to exist for generations. Like, I'm confident of it. But the other side was watching our global goer community, what we call kind of missionaries, and how resilient their network was. And it wasn't built off of this formal affiliation. It was built off of shared vision, shared history, shared narrative, but it was spread across a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
Really, really interested. And I'm really, really believing that the church in Austin is very strong, but there's also a role for something like a mission society to strengthen and cultivate resilience in the kingdom more broadly, just in a very different way. And so that feels, very kind of like a big idea. But the last piece I'll say is I long to be a part of life and ministry where the gifts of the Spirit are emphasized. And, you know, as I've wrestled even with some of the things that we taught, Jeff, like mission is the organizing principle of the church. I'm like, I believe that to be true in kind, but more and more as I live this life, I'm like, I think the gifts of the Spirit are the organizing principle of the church. God has gifted Ephesians 4 gifts to the body. And, you know, 1 Corinthians 12, Romans 12, 1 Peter 4, like make it really clear that everyone has a role to play and the Spirit has given a gift. And I want God's people and God's ministries and God's churches to embrace, in some sense, that reality. So
I love that. You know, there's a group of us who have been journeying together for many, many years. And one of the things we've said over and over again is it seems like the next, whether you want to call it a reformation, but like the next big need for the church is the mobilization of every believer and or the priesthood of all the saints, or whatever language you want to use. But it's like all the resources are there. All the gifts are there. Everything we need is there. But so many are sitting passively watching and not engaged. And I mean, that's one of my biggest passions too, is you can see normal everyday people engaging in the work of God in their place, where they work, live, work, learn, or play, in light of their gifts, empowered by the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing. The gates of hell will not prevail, for sure. And so that's a big part of what we're all about. I mean, that's such a passion for Saturate. I think that probably the three things that we emphasize best is disciple making, mobilizing every believer to be a disciple maker. More recently, the last few years, leader health, because of my own journey, the journey of others, you include. I mean, a lot of us have gone through our own journey of kind of waking up and going, Lord, I want to make it to the end. I want to have a thriving walk with the Lord, a flourishing marriage and family life, and I want to be in a ministry where I don't ruin what we have. And then the third one, I think, is just saying, how do we collaborate in a city? How do we help? How do we truly work together? Which, I mean, all those three things matter so much to you. But as you think about those three, you think about Austin, or you just think in general about city collaboration, why are those three so important? I mean, we talk about that quite a bit, but I'd love for you to give your perspective on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think disciple making is the Great Commission, and in many ways it's so easy, even for me, in the leadership and stewardship that I had at the Austin Stone, to sort of think ever so slightly the church is the hope of the world. And I think there's merit to that statement, but at the end of the day, the Great Commission is go therefore and make disciples,
That's
know,
right. Yes.
And church health, church effectiveness, again, there is a lot to it. I love organizational health and thinking, but at the end of the day, the healthiest churches make disciples. And in so many ways, we get lost in all of the detail. And part of the reason I love Saturate and part of the reason I live life the way that I do is I think disciple making is the expression of basic faithful biblical obedience. And whether that's through missional communities, disciple making movements, simple house churches, large scale mega churches, and everything in between, like, the goal is make disciples, which brings me to collaboration. I'm like, if that's true, right, that the church, the purpose for God's church existing is to bring him glory and to be obedient to his commission to make disciples, then collaboration actually should be pretty easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
We make it really hard,
We for sure.
And part of that, I think, is leader health. It's like leaders in God's kingdom, are tempted in the very ways that every leader is. I'm significant. I'm important. What I say matters, or what I say should be done, and it's just this constant battle in the life of a leader whom God has given station, authority, influence, however you want to describe it, to say, not my will be done, but yours, Lord. And sanctification is a huge part of the leadership journey. And also sanctification takes a lifetime, And so walking with people over time in the community of the saints that's shaped and formed by other churches and other ministries, I think really is the best way to cultivate health, even though the church can be very, very difficult, even though the church can wound you more deeply than darn near any institution on the planet Earth. I still believe that she has a huge role to play in our health and our joy. David and Kaylee contribute significantly to my joy and to my health, even though none of us are perfectly healthy, but it's because we're disciples of Jesus, living in community, participating in the church, and working together to see the city of Austin flourish. And none of us are perfect, but all of us are being perfected, by Christ in this way. And so I can't do life without David and Keeley. I can't do it without April and Gabe. I can't do it without Ryan and Teresa, Can't do it without Todd and Lauren and all the other people that make up this extended, beautiful community that we have. I'm just preaching now, but man, when I think about those three things, it's life. That's life to the full. It's abundant life, and that's what God wants for us. So
yes, that's so good. Well, I got to be in your neighborhood briefly. And get to hang out with your family a bit.
5 kids. It's always a joy. So
wow, you're a blessed man.
Either that or a crazy man. So
well, a little bit of both, but no, I mean, really, it was a joy to be with you guys, and even as you're naming names of people that you do life and community with, I wonder, and this is my hope for anyone listening, is like, could they list off a group of people like that know their life, examine their life, are present in their life, are doing life together, doing mission together, ministry together? Like, that is what you're made for. And God set you apart for this work. And so it was fun for me to get to see your neighborhood and dream a little bit about what you're doing there on mission.
And don't forget the barbecue as well, man. You got to enjoy Texas barbecue.
That was good. That was very good. Oh, you can't go to Austin and not have that. So I was glad that you made sure we didn't leave without having our barbecue. So,
amen.
Yeah, that was fun. So you're learning a lot. I would love to hear what's fresh for you right now. What are you excited about? What are you discovering? What are you pressing into?
Yeah. What's present focus right now is we have a gathering this Saturday, and so I was just telling you before this, I'm in the stress of like pre-event thing, and I think there's equal parts for me of like sincere excitement, because again, it's a small group of people that are going to join us this Saturday, but all of them are disciples of Jesus, and many of them are strategic leaders in kind of kingdom ecosystem work. And it's been really fun, as we've started this thing, just to kind of see who shows up. And so I'm really excited for that event. But more than that, this ministry is voluntarily associated. It's not built off of like, hey, we're going to pay people to do things. It's like, who wants to play a part, and saying, have at it, So there's just this fun freedom to say, Shane, my friend Shane, is going to be the presenter. Shane leads a company here in Austin, and he has a lot of free time, So the work that he's doing is preparatory and hopes that, God would bless his business. But he's like, I just feel this sense of calling from God right now that the season I'm in to give to John 17 unity. And he spent all of last year interviewing kingdom leaders throughout Austin. And Shane, for one reason, wanted to talk to me. And we've just struck up this friendship, it's become really fun. And he's giving what he has of his experiences, not as somebody in vocational ministry, but as a skilled, like, strategist and also convening kind of leader. And he's going to present his perspective on Austin to this group. I'm like, this is awesome. Because it's not just the really gifted, really successful kingdom church leader. It's a dude named Shane, who loves Jesus and felt compelled to be obedient to the Spirit's activity. And he's going to share and shape kingdom leaders here in Austin. I'm like, that gets me fired up. So
I love that.
Maybe more than that, it's like, this is the sensibility I have in Austin and even in our country right now with this little glimpse that I have. I've described it as like the Spirit's activity is starting to be evident again. There's these little bubbles of God's grace and God's people sort of stepping out in ways that it really felt like was just dormant and sleepy for really about the last 10 years for me. Again, that's kind of my lived experience, but yeah, there just wasn't this sense of like stirring and freshness. And I'm starting to see it in Austin. And I'm starting to see it through ministry that we get to do together in Saturate and other conversations I have where whatever the Spirit desires to do, and I'm begging, I'm pleading, do something new in our day. Don't let the best days of your grace and your power be in my past. Like, I want to be a part of this new wave of your activity. And I know he doesn't promise it, but it just starts to feel like we're at the beginning of something again.
Yeah.
And I'm really eager to, independent of any organization, any church, to say, Spirit of God, move, and I want to be part.
Yes.
I love what we've gotten to see in Charleston. I love what I get to hear about in Tokyo. I love what you've done in Seattle. And I look at it and I go, more. Like, can we have
Lord.
More of that, please?
Lord. Yes.
So, yeah, that's probably, it feels very general. I've got a specific strategy lined out, but I won't get into all those details. So,
well, I know we'll talk in the future again on this podcast about some of that, because I do want to keep tracking along the way. You and I both collectively believe that there's so much good work to be done in Austin that will happen. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more. As we conclude, what would you want to say to encourage or invite our listeners into?
Gosh, I always want to be very specific in my encouragement. So, like, I want to speak to every single listener. What is God speaking to you? How can I help you in that regard? But maybe on behalf of Saturate, we have this rich history of resources that have been created from skilled and experienced, gospel-loving, spirit-filled, deeply thoughtful leaders. And as I've kind of become acquainted with all of Saturate and how we steward these resources, I'm like, they're still really good.
Yeah, they are. We've been really blessed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a treasure, a hidden treasure for some because they haven't found it. Yeah.
Amen. We get caught up in this, like, if it's not new, it's like, I'm like, man, looking back at all God graced, kind of this kingdom practitioner community with the experience and the written word still stand the test of time, even if they might be slightly outdated in design or whatever. I'm like, they're still really, really good because they're theologically rich. They're philosophically oriented, but they're also very practical in helping you take a step. So that probably feels like a sales pitch. So sorry, podcast audience, but I still love what we do and would love to commend them to you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. I sometimes I feel like we don't talk about that enough, and it feels like we're holding back. Because maybe it is that we don't want to sound like a salesman, but it's like when you've got resources that could serve the church significantly, and people don't know it and don't have an access to it. It's sad, because there are a lot of people sitting out there wondering what to do. It's like, man, we've helped so many. Thousands and thousands of people all over the world. And so, please take advantage of that.
Came to mind too, just in terms of the personal ask, like podcast listeners, I don't know who you are, but if you have suggestions or input or desires for Saturate, literally just email me, Todd@saturatetheworld.com. I promise I will respond. So TODD@saturatetheworld.com. Feel free to shoot me an email.
Yeah.
We will read it. We will engage it. We will think about it. We will pray over it. And who knows, your email might just shape the direction of Saturate.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because a lot of what we're trying to do is say, like, how do we help you? Our desire is to serve the church and to serve every leader and every believer that's engaged in this to be the most effective disciple maker they can be.
Amen.
And so, man, anything we can do to help that, we want to do it. So,
Amen.
Yeah. Todd, I'm really thankful you're on the team. I'm glad I get to introduce you to the larger audience of Saturate. I anticipate lots and lots of stories that we'll get to share over the next coming months and years as we work together. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your love for your city, but most importantly, your love for Jesus and how that works out in your own household. It was just fun to see that. So love you, brother.
Love you too, man.